In the shadow of the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, like a little sibling, echoing the same kind of geometric design and domed profile, is a little pavilion called the Dome of the Chain. The small dome, known in Arabic as Qubat al-Silsila, is not nearly as famous as the one next door, which is one of the best known structures on Earth, but it's just as old, or maybe even slightly older, standing here for more than 13 centuries, since the end of the 7th century CE. In fact, along with the neighboring dome, which was built around the same time, this is the oldest surviving structure still in use in Jerusalem. Much about the pavilion remains mysterious. Scholars still debate when exactly it was built and why, but we know it tells a story about a dramatic change in the city, the arrival of new conquerors who came with a radical new faith, but who also shared the belief of the previous rulers, Christians and Jews, that this is no ordinary city. In 638 CE, the new religion of Islam was erupting from the Arabian Peninsula in a wave of conversion and conquest. That year, the Caliph Umar, heir of the Prophet Muhammad, arrived in Jerusalem at the head of a Muslim army. The transfer of power was relatively peaceful. Christian life in the city wasn't eradicated, but simply began to fade. This conquest was very different from the Roman destruction of Jerusalem centuries earlier, in which change came violently through war and a dramatic replacement of the Jewish population. Under Muslim rule, the transformation stretched slowly over 2 centuries. The population went from mostly Christian to mostly Muslim, and the design of the city changed. Jerusalem began assuming an Islamic character, which remains today. The open spaces, colonnades, and broad plazas of the Roman city gradually disappeared, replaced by new houses and by narrower streets. In inscriptions and manuscripts, we see Greek, the dominant local language, give way to Arabic. The streets of Jerusalem filled up with mosques, each of them considered a little paradise on earth. The desert roots of Islam are clearly reflected here. Paradise is imagined as a place of shade, greenery, and water. Even the simplest mosque will have trees and fountains, not just for ritual washing before prayer, but simply for beauty. People would gather to relax, get some relief from the heat outside, and listen to the sound of running water. Of course, the new rulers, the Arab Umayyad dynasty, needed new palaces. The most elaborate of these is located east of Jerusalem in Jericho and is known as Khirbet al-Mafjar. Today, stunning pieces from that residence, including stucco and carved stone panels, are housed at Jerusalem's Rockefeller Museum. Every inch of the panels is covered with intricate designs, a defining feature of the early Islamic Umayyad style. Perhaps surprisingly, for a time we associate with ascetic religion and with strict rules against graven images, there are human figures, like curly-haired cherubs, semi-nude dancers, and even a statue that some believe may be of the Caliph himself. But perhaps the most dramatic development is what the new Muslim rulers did with the parts of Jerusalem that their predecessors had ignored. This is a map of the old city of Jerusalem as we know it today. And here it is overlaid in blue with the outline of the city as it existed in Byzantine times. What these maps show is that in the days of Christian rule, much of Jerusalem was abandoned and unused, including what had once been the most important site in the entire city, the Temple Mount itself. Under Christianity, the mount stood bare, even serving as a garbage dump. The Christian faith wanted the sorry state of the once holy site to serve as a testament to God's abandonment of the Jews. The 10th century historian and geographer El-Muqaddasi, who was from Jerusalem, describes the Islamic city of his lifetime being developed precisely in the parts that had remained empty under the Byzantines. The new rulers of Jerusalem didn't destroy its existing architecture, that is, but rather filled in its open spaces, including, most importantly, the Temple Mount. For them, the mount became associated with El-Aqsa, the farthest sanctuary, described in the Quran as the destination of a miraculous night journey that the Prophet Muhammad took from Mecca. From here, he ascended to heaven. According to Islamic theology, this is why the magnificent Dome of the Rock was built on the site of the former Jewish temple. The The dome is a monument to that miraculous ascent. It's not a mosque, but a commemorative structure. This likely explains the choice of its architectural form, a dome atop an octagon, which was used in the Byzantine world for memorials and martyr shrines. But not everything was about pure religion. Part of what was going on was competition for dominance of the city's history and even its skyline. When Islam arrived, the most prominent structure here was a Christian dome, that of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The new Muslim rulers tolerated Christianity, but they needed to outdo the architecture of the older religion, hence the new, glorious, and Islamic dome on the city's most hallowed religious real estate, the site of Solomon's Temple. We know much less about the obscure little dome of the chain. It was built by the Umayyad dynasty, the same rulers behind the Dome of the Rock, but may well have been here before the larger dome. It stands precisely at the center of the Temple Mount, which can't be coincidence, but no one really knows what it signifies. Whatever its purpose, the mysterious dome was one of the first beautiful Islamic structures to mark the transformation of Jerusalem into the Muslim city El-Quds, or the Holy, which came to be seen as the third holiest city in Islam after the Arabian cities of Mecca and Medina. The ceramic tiles that now cover the exteriors of both dome structures were added much later, but the lower parts of the outside ornamentation include ancient Byzantine marble that was taken from older buildings and repurposed by Muslim craftsmen. You can even find Christian fragments with crosses that have been erased or concealed, as well as sections of Byzantine columns and capitals. The domes aren't just part of the history of Jerusalem, they're actually made of the history of Jerusalem, a city where the past never quite seems to disappear.